I've been driving trucks for decades, but I've never seen anything as strange as the one that disappeared without a trace. I swear I'm not the type to get spooked easily. I've seen everything on the road, drunk swerving at all hours, strange hitchhikers with too much baggage, and even the occasional wildlife wandering across the asphalt. But what happened to me at that gas station? It's been years, and I still can't explain it. It's like a nightmare I can't wake up from. A nightmare I keep reliving. It was late, way too late, and the only light on the highway came from the headlights of my rig. A cold February night had wrapped its claws around the desert like it was trying to freeze everything in its path. My fuel gauge was nearly on empty, and there wasn't a town in sight for miles. So I saw the old, lonely gas station ahead. I didn't hesitate. I had no choice but to stop. The place was a relic, just a shack with a few pumps out front. Nothing fancy, nothing inviting. I pulled in, the tires crunching over the gravel. My headlights flickered as I rolled up beside the pumps, and that's when I saw it. Another truck. At the far end of the lot, there was an old rig parked under a flickering streetlight. The truck looked like it hadn't been moved in years, rust on the fenders, a faded paint job that was hard to make out in the dark. It was huge, though, the kind of rig you don't see much anymore. Definitely not something I'd expect to find in the middle of nowhere. I wasn't the type to get curious about another trucker's rig, but this one, it pulled me in. I didn't know why. Maybe it was the stillness of the whole place, the way everything felt frozen, like the air itself had stopped moving. As I got out of my truck and walked toward it, a strange coldness hit me. It wasn't the kind of cold you get from the wind. It was something deeper, a chill that seemed to seep into your bones. I stopped, shivers crawling up my spine, but I had already come this far, so I kept walking. I reached the truck and stood there for a moment, just staring. It was so quiet out here, too quiet. I could hear nothing but the soft sound of my breath and the distant hum of the highway behind me. The truck's chrome was tarnished, the tires flat, no lights on, no sound, like the thing was just abandoned. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Who the hell leaves a truck like this? I muttered to myself, shaking my head. I leaned in to get a closer look at the windshield. It was streaked with grime, but through the dirt, I could just barely make out something written on the side. The letters were hard to read, but I thought I saw the word Willow before the wind kicked up, obscuring the letters. A weird thing to name a truck, I thought. I stepped back and rubbed my hands together, trying to shake off the unsettling feeling creeping up my spine. That's when I heard it, a low growl of an engine turning over. Not just any engine, a heavy, rumbling engine, like the truck had come to life right behind me. My heart skipped a beat. I spun around, expecting to see the truck roaring to life, its lights blazing. But nothing. The truck was gone. I stood there, dumbfounded. The lot was empty now. No rig, no lights, nothing but the gravel underfoot and the sound of the wind. I rubbed my eyes, thinking maybe I'd imagined it. But when I opened them again, the truck was still gone. I should have gotten back into my rig and left. But I didn't. Something about the whole thing was off. I kept walking back toward my own truck, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, waiting. The fuel pump clicked, and I stood there for a while, just staring at the empty lot. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe I had been too tired to notice some trucker pulling out of the lot and heading off. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. That wasn't what happened. I finished fueling up, paid at the tiny booth, and got back into my truck. I couldn't stop thinking about the strange truck. The way it had been parked, the way it had disappeared. When I finally got back on the road, the highway stretched on for miles in front of me. but I couldn't shake the memory of that eerie stillness, the coldness that seemed to follow me. The next few weeks were, well, I don't know how to explain them. But that night at the gas station, it wasn't over. I kept driving like I always did, hauling freight up and down the highway. But it felt like I was being followed, not by another truck, but by something else, an unease that settled into the pit of my stomach every time I took the wheel. It was as though the memory of that old rig was haunting me, drifting into my thoughts when I least expected it. The worst part was, I kept seeing that same gas station in my dreams. I'd drive up to it like it was pulling me in, and when I got close enough, the truck would be there again, sitting, watching. But no matter how hard I tried, I could never get close enough to figure out what was wrong with it. Every time I tried to step closer, it was like the world would twist, and I'd wake up with a jolt in the middle of the night. But then, it happened again. I found myself on that same stretch of highway, pulling up to that damn gas station like I'd been led there by something unseen. This time, it was different though. The place wasn't as quiet as I remembered. There were lights on. A low hum filled the air. And there, parked in front of my truck, was that old rig. I froze. The coldness returned, washing over me like a wave. I could feel the sweat prickling on my skin, but it was no use. My legs didn't want to move. The engine idled low, like the truck was waiting for me to make the first move. Then I heard it, a voice, deep, gravelly, and muffled. It wasn't coming from the truck, but from behind it, like it was coming from inside the earth itself. "I'm still here." I thought I was alone on that desolate highway, but by the time I realized something was wrong, it was already too late. The moon casts a pale light over the desert highway, and the rumble of a truck's engine echoes into the still night air. We focus on the driver, a weary long-haul trucker named Carl, his face lined with exhaustion and his eyes heavy from hours of solitary driving. You spend enough time on the road, you get used to the quiet, the kind of quiet that sinks into your bones. The endless desert, the flickering lights of truck stops, and the hum of your engine. You don't think too much about it. Not until something isn't right. The headlights of Carl's truck cut through the darkness, but ahead, something strange catches his eye, a figure standing alone on the side of the road. I saw him in the distance first, a guy standing by the shoulder, waving his arms. You don't see many people out here this time of night. Hell, you hardly see anything at all, but you stop, because you have to. Carl pulls over to the side of the road, the truck's brakes screeching slightly as they come to a halt. The figure approaches. Rolls down the window. "Need a ride, buddy?" "Yeah, man. Appreciate it. I'm just trying to get to the next town. My car broke down a few miles back." "Well, you're in luck. I'm headed that way." The stranger climbs in, and Carl notices he's wearing a weathered jacket and seems a bit too thin, a little too pale. But nothing alarming. "Wasn't sure anyone would stop this late. Thanks again." Carl gives a small nod and pulls back onto the highway. The truck's headlights illuminate the dark, endless stretch of road ahead. As the miles pass, Carl glances at his passenger. The man's hands are trembling, and his face is pale in the dim glow of the dashboard lights. Carl figures he's just another unlucky soul stranded in the middle of nowhere. Maybe I shouldn't have picked him up. Maybe I should have just kept on driving. But something about him felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it though. Something didn't seem right. I noticed his hands were shaking like he was cold, but the night wasn't that chilly. The truck moves down the empty highway. Silence, fills the cab, save for the hum of the engine. Carl shifts his eyes from the road to the man sitting beside him. "You all right? You look a little pale there." "Oh, yeah, just tired. You know, been a long night." Carl nods, sensing more than he can explain. His gut tells him something's wrong, but he brushes it off. The trucker turns the radio on to break the silence. That's when I started noticing the smell. At first, I thought it was just the stale air in the truck, but then it hit me, a sharp, pungent odor, something rotting, like something dead. Carl shifts uncomfortably in his seat and glances at his passenger. The man's eyes are unfocused, his face even paler than before. The air inside the truck feels colder than it should. "Man, you sure you're all right? It's getting kinda cold in here." His voice shakes. "Yeah, it's fine." The truck's heater starts working overtime, but it does little to chase the chill in the air. Carl looks out the window, feeling an odd unease settle over him. The miles drag on, and Carl can't shake the feeling that something is terribly wrong. The stranger is acting stranger by the minute. His eyes look unfocused, his skin growing paler with every passing hour. And the smell, it's getting worse. I didn't want to admit it, but I knew something wasn't right. The guy wasn't just cold, he was wrong. His body language was off, his movements jerky, like he didn't belong in this world. And the smell, it was like a dead animal had crawled into the truck and died in the vents. Carl glances at the passenger seat again, trying to make sense of it all. The man's face is no longer just pale. It's like the life has been drained out of him, his skin almost translucent. I told myself it was just exhaustion. Maybe it was the late hours getting to me. Maybe it was the isolation. But then I saw it. The reflection in the side mirror. The truck's side mirror reveals something Carl doesn't expect: a shadow moving behind the truck, too quick to be a car or any other kind of vehicle. I looked back, nothing, but the feeling didn't go away. It got worse. I kept seeing things in the reflection. Something moving behind me. Something that shouldn't be there. Hours pass. The truck pulls into a secluded rest stop. Carl slows the truck and stops, his mind racing. He glances at the passenger seat. When I stopped at that rest area, I thought maybe I could get out, get some air, and shake off the weird feeling. Maybe the guy needed a break too, right? Carl opens the door and steps out of the truck. The cool desert air hits him, and he takes a deep breath. He glances back at the truck. The stranger's door is still closed. Strange. Carl didn't remember the guy getting out, but the truck was quiet. To himself, "Hey, you, good." He walks around to the passenger side, but when he opens the door, the seat is empty. The man is gone. Carl's heart skips a beat. Panic starts to rise in his chest. I searched the damn truck, but there was no sign of him. No trace. I thought I was losing my mind. Maybe I'd just been driving too long. Maybe I had hallucinated the whole damn thing. But then I saw the handprints. There on the side of his truck, just below the window. Bloody handprints, large, smeared and fresh, as though someone had tried to claw their way inside. The terror begins to flood Carl's mind as his heart pounds in his chest. It wasn't just the handprints, it was the feeling. That gnawing, crawling feeling that had been there all along, telling me something wasn't right. The guy, the smell, the cold, the shadows following me. It wasn't just my imagination. Carl stumbles back from the truck, his legs weak. He takes one last look at the desert road, trying to make sense of it all. That's when I knew. That's when it hit me. The man wasn't real. There was no breakdown. There was no car. The guy, he wasn't just some random traveler. He was something else, something dead. The trucker backs away, his heart hammering in his chest. Suddenly, he hears a soft, rasping whisper from behind him. "You let me in." Carl spins around, but no one is there. The only thing he can hear is the wind moaning through the emptiness. Carl takes off running, leaving the truck behind. The desert night swallows him up, and as he runs, he feels a cold hand brush against his back. The trucker stumbles and falls, his breath ragged. I don't know what happened next. I don't know if I blacked out or if whatever it was still following me. But when I woke up, I was back in my truck, and the highway was empty. The scene fades as Carl looks at his hands, now covered in blood, the truck standing silently under the moonlight. The shadows stretch unnaturally, and the strange rotten smell fills the air once again. I don't know if I made it out of that night or if I'm still there, stuck on that highway with the phantom passenger I let in. I never picked up hitchhikers, but this one had an eerie way of knowing things about me that no one should know. The endless stretch of highway stretches out in front of Matt, a seasoned truck driver in his late 42nd, his truck cabin filled with the hum of the engine. His eyes are focused on the road, but his mind is somewhere else, distant and tired. It's been a long haul. He wipes sweat from his forehead and glances at the truck's clock. Matt, 500 miles left, just 500 more. Then I can take a break, get some sleep, maybe a beer. The sun beats down, the heat rising from the cracked asphalt like an ominous wave. Suddenly, he notices something in the corner of his eye. A figure standing by the side of the road, a man, thin and ragged, his thumb outstretched in the age-old gesture of a hitchhiker. Matt sighs, squinting his eyes. Matt, shit. This is what I need right now. But as Matt looks again, something feels off. The man's eyes lock onto his, and it's like something in the depths of his gaze tugs at Matt, something unnerving. A cold shiver runs down Matt's spine, but then the voice of his better judgment kicks in. Matt, to himself, keep driving. You don't know him. You don't stop for hitchhikers. But the man doesn't look like any hitchhiker Matt has seen before. His clothes are torn, filthy, and his face. There's a haunting look in his eyes, like a man who's seen too much, or perhaps knows too much. Matt taps his fingers on the steering wheel, wrestling with himself. He has a good heart, one that's helped more people than he can count. Maybe just this once. He pulls over. The truck rolls to a stop next to the man. The stranger approaches, slow and deliberate. He doesn't say a word, just opens the door and gets in, sitting down next to Matt with a heavy sigh. The man smells faintly of sweat, dirt, and something darker. Something off. Matt, where you headed? The hitchhiker, James, doesn't answer immediately. He simply glances at Matt, his eyes not shifting. It's like he's staring through him, into him. James, where you going? I know you're headed north. You'll take that route by the old mill and then get on to Route 22. Matt's breath catches in his throat. His mind races. How does this stranger know his exact route? Matt, how? How the hell do you know that? James just smiles, a faint, twisted grin creeping across his face. There's no warmth to it, just something wrong. James, you always take that route, don't you? For the last 5 years, you always stop for gas at the same place, too. The one with the cracked window, same guy behind the counter. Name's Ralph, right? Matt's stomach churns. The description is too precise, too exact. He doesn't want to show it, but panic begins to creep into his mind. He grips the steering wheel harder, the veins in his hands standing out. His mouth goes dry. Matt, who are you? James turns to look out the window. As if he hasn't heard the question, his expression softens. "James, what's the name of your wife again?" "Sarah, right. You've been married for 14 years, but you still don't sleep in the same bed as her." Matt's breath stops. His grip tightens so hard on the wheel that his knuckles go white. He can feel the sweat pooling beneath his shirt. How the hell does he know that? "Matt, who the hell are you?" James doesn't answer. "Instead," he continues, his voice taking on a sing-song rhythm as if he's enjoying this too much. "James, your daughter, Amber, she's 8 now. You're afraid to leave her alone with Sarah, aren't you? Something's off with her. You think she knows, don't you?" A chill runs down Matt's spine. How could he know these things? His breath becomes shallow. His eyes flick nervously to the rearview mirror. "Matt, that's enough." James smiles, but there's no kindness in it. His teeth are too sharp, too white. The night falls, and the truck's headlights slice through the darkness, casting long shadows on the road. The two continue in silence, but Matt is far from comfortable. His mind races, replaying James' words over and over. How does this man know things that only he, Sarah, and Amber should know? He tries to focus on the road, to distract himself, but then James speaks again. "James, you're not going to make it, you know. Not tonight. You've been driving for too long, and it's only a matter of time before you fall asleep behind the wheel." Matt shakes his head, his heart pounding in his chest. "Matt, I'm fine. I can handle it." But James just chuckles, a dark, hollow sound. "James, you're so tired. You haven't slept properly in days. You'll nod off soon. I'll be right here when you do, right here, watching." The words seep into Matt's mind like poison. His eyes grow heavy, and for a brief moment, he swears he sees something strange in the reflection of the mirror, a shadow, a shape that shouldn't be there. "Matt, I'm not tired. I'm fine." But despite his protest, his eyelids grow heavier. He reaches for the coffee cup, but it's empty. The exhaustion, the unease, it's all starting to take its toll. James looks over at him with that same eerie smile. "James, sleep, Matt. Sleep. It won't matter. I know where you're going. I know everything." Matt feels his body relax against his will. His vision blurs, and the truck swerves slightly as his head dips lower. Matt jerks awake, the truck skidding to a halt in the parking lot of an old isolated rest area. The engine idles, the only sound, the soft hum of it. The air is thick with tension. Matt blinks rapidly, heart racing. He can't remember when he fell asleep, but something's wrong. The truck's cabin feels cold, far too cold. He looks around. James is gone. Matt, what the hell? Matt quickly exits the truck, his boots hitting the gravel with a loud crunch. The silence is overwhelming. He scans the area. Nothing. Not a sign of James anywhere. Then, on the passenger seat of the truck, he spots something, a note folded neatly. He opens it slowly, hands trembling. On the paper, in clear, deliberate handwriting, is his name. "Matt Walker, I've been watching. You've been watched. Your time is running out. You can't escape me." And at the bottom, the date is scrawled, February 17, 2024. But Matt's eyes widen with terror as he notices something. The note is aged, yellowed. The ink is fading. The date doesn't match the current year. It's from over a year ago. Matt, how is this possible? As he stares at the note, a shadow moves behind him, too quick, too close. He spins around, but there's nothing, just the empty darkness of the rest area. Matt's mind is racing, the events of the night unspooling in his thoughts. He starts the truck, hands shaking as he grips the wheel. He tries to shake the fear, the panic. He needs to get back on the road. He needs to leave this place behind. But then a thought strikes him, cold and sudden. What if it's not over? What if the hitchhiker isn't gone? What if he's still watching? Matt floors the gas pedal, the truck roaring back onto the highway. But the road stretches endlessly in front of him, and the weight of the unknown presses down on his chest. And the more he drives, the more he feels the sensation of eyes on him watching, waiting. The darkness seems to stretch farther than before. He doesn't know if he's truly alone anymore. It started as a tiny dot in the rearview mirror. By morning, it was chasing me down the interstate. I've driven these roads for years. It's supposed to be the quiet part of the job. Nothing but open road, sky, and the occasional mile marker to break up the monotony. When you've been on the road as long as I have, you learn to ignore the little things. You have to. He takes a drag from a cigarette, blowing the smoke out the window. The only company out here is the hum of the engine and the occasional trucker who passes by. I saw it at first as just another trucker. The headlights were too far off to be any real concern. I've seen trucks following me before, and it was just another lonely night on the interstate. He turns the radio dial, trying to distract himself. The sound of static crackles. Come on, just a little more to the left. That's the thing about the road at night. You get this sense of being alone, like the world's forgotten you. But you get used to it. It becomes your peace. The headlights seem to be getting closer, though Jack doesn't pay it much mind. After a while, I started to notice something was off. The truck that was behind me wasn't dropping back like it should have. I had picked up the pace over 80 miles an hour, and it was still there, the headlights, right behind me, like some sort of shadow, just there, following. He checks the mirror again. The headlights are no longer distant, but almost directly behind him. He blinks, squinting, unsure. I thought maybe I was just imagining things. That happens when you drive too long. You see things that aren't there. The headlights don't fade away, and Jack's pulse quickens. He grips the wheel harder, glancing nervously at the mirror. Jack, what the hell? A bead of sweat appears on his forehead. He pushes the accelerator, the truck's engine roaring as he speeds up to 90 mph. The headlights stay fixed. Hours pass. The sun is still far from rising. Jack's hands are white on the wheel, his eyes darting back and forth between the road and the rearview mirror. I thought about pulling over, maybe asking the other driver what the hell they were doing, but something told me not to. I can't explain it, but I knew that if I stopped, if I let them catch up to me, something bad was gonna happen. The truck is now swerving slightly as Jack's nerves start to break down. His eyes grow wide with fear. The headlights are still behind him, just a few car lengths back. It wasn't just the headlights anymore. It was something about the way the truck followed me. It wasn't normal. I don't know how to explain it. It felt like it knew what I was thinking, like it could predict my next move. He swerves again, trying to shake the other truck off his tail. The truck behind him swerves exactly the same way, keeping up with every turn. I didn't know if it was one person or if they had a whole team of drivers working shifts to stay on my ass. It didn't matter. I was losing it. Jack's breathing becomes shallow, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. He looks in the mirror again this time. The headlights are too close. He can't outrun it. Jack, who the hell are you? He suddenly jerks the wheel to the left, trying to force the other truck to move, but the headlights stay in his rear view, never wavering. Jack's pulse races. Jack's truck finally pulls into a truck stop, the distant lights from the gas station blinking like a beacon. He screeches to a stop, His body is shaking as he jumps out of the truck, looking wildly around. The headlights are gone, but the feeling of being watched remains. What the hell? He stumbles away from the truck, breathing heavily. He doesn't look at the rearview mirror again, but he can feel the weight of something still lurking. The truck stop is empty. He sees no other vehicles except his own. I thought I was safe. I thought maybe I was just losing my mind from the road, but I was wrong. Jack walks to the back of the truck to check the cargo. The camera follows him, his footsteps echoing on the pavement. Suddenly, he stops in his tracks, his eyes wide in horror. Jack, no, 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 no. There are scratches on the side of the truck, long, jagged, deep marks, as if something had been trying to claw its way inside. I thought maybe it was just road debris, but that wasn't it. That wasn't it at all. Jack opens the door to the truck, staring inside. The seat is covered in dust, as it should be. But as he inspects further, he finds something that sends a chill down his spine. Fresh dirt, like someone had been hiding underneath. The sun rises over the horizon, casting a faint light on the empty highway. Jack is sitting inside his truck, staring at the mirror. By the time the sun came up, I was still in shock. My hands were shaking. My body wouldn't stop trembling. I couldn't make sense of it. The truck's engine hums as Jack starts it up again, his eyes wary of the open road ahead. The rearview mirror reflects only the vast, empty highway. I thought maybe it was over, that maybe it had been my imagination. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was still there, just waiting, hiding, watching. The camera cuts to the rearview mirror one last time, showing the highway behind him stretching endlessly into the distance. There's nothing there, or is there? Maybe you'll think I'm crazy. Maybe you'll think I made it up. But I swear, I wasn't alone that night. There was someone behind me, and I don't know if it was human. Jack's truck drives into the distance, the eerie silence hanging in the air. All I know is this: it was never just about the road. It was never just about the highway. It was about something out there that wanted me. And no matter where I went, no matter how far I drove, it was always going to be waiting for me in that rearview mirror. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon for the next stories. We need your support. Please share these stories with your friends and family. Thank you.